What's going on, reefers? Blaine here. In today's video, we are hanging back in the studio. You guys seem to really enjoy the update on the Reefer 250. I loved being able to showcase the progress and everything that's been going on with that tank. But today we're going to change our focus to our other tank in the studio, and we're going to be focusing on the Innovative Marine 15-gallon. Just like the Reefer 250, the Innovative Marine 15-gallon came with challenges as well. We're going to talk about those in today's video. We're going to give you an update on all the livestock, what's been going on with the fish, the corals, and we're also going to talk about some of the equipment we're currently running on the system. Let's go ahead and get right into some of the issues we had when we were developing this tank. Now, I will say this right off the start. One of the first problems we're going to talk about when it comes to the Innovative Marine is the scape. Now, I'm going to say I do love the scape. I love both the scapes we have here in the studio. Extremely dynamic. They're very unique, and in my opinion, they're one of a kind. Really hard to mimic these exact scapes. Obviously, with the 15-gallon, we have the rockwork coming out of the water. We've got some crazy overarching arms and things like that, and it's very intricate in how it's designed with the tank. But with that in mind, it has brought some problems to getting the system rolling. One thing in particular is the cleanup crew. We talked about this in the Reefer 250 video. It is kind of hard for a lot of the cleanup crew to get onto the rockwork, make their way through the Rockscape, and be able to pick away those nuisance algae. That was one of our issues when we had a ton of turf algae and things like that forming in the 15-gallon. It was really hard for us to get our inverts and our cleanup crew onto the Rockscape, so we had to add in some extra little highways basically to try and force more rocks to be attached to the scape, so there was more areas for the cleanup crew to get onto the main rockwork. Now, with that in mind as well, if the cleanup crew does make it onto the rock, it is pretty difficult to make its way all the way through the entire system and to get into all the nooks and crannies of this Rockscape. I would say that definitely was an attribute to why we had a bit of turf algae, some nuisance algae from the start. We were constantly kind of re-upping our cleanup crew in here, and I think we're looking for the perfect kind of cleanup crew package for this particular tank. With how dynamic the scape is, we're trying to figure out the perfect critters to be able to get into this tank, work their way around, and work their magic. I will say I think the tuxedo urchin we've added into the tank has been a huge help as well. He's able to kind of cling on and hold on during all those difficult to maneuver areas, and he's able to cruise his way around and pick away most of those nuisance algae. Back to our nuisance algae, we ended up doing pretty much the same exact situation as we did with the Reefer 250. We had some pretty crazy turf algae growing. We ended up sliding the Rockscape completely off the tank, laid it down here in the studio, and we ended up taking a butane blowtorch directly to it. This is actually the first time I've ever done this in my reefing career, taking the rockwork out and using a torch to completely burn away all of the nuisance algae. But after doing so, I think it really helped get the tank back on the right track. Once we did that too, we added in some extra rubble from around the farm. We added a lot more coralline into the tank as well. I think it was really important once we got all of that algae burnt off and it was back to kind of a bare rock situation. It was almost like resetting the cycle. It was really important for us to add in a lot of extra beneficial bacteria, a lot of extra coralline algae to try and seed itself onto the Rockscape so no more nuisance algae would be able to grow. I thought it was important also that I mentioned we utilized fluconazole at one point on this tank, and we even tried using dosing of hydrogen peroxide as well. So I would say that's been definitely some of the harder things to deal with this scape. It has been kind of a difficult thing to work around, you know. Also, when it comes to placement of corals, we're limiting ourselves in the space that we have. If I had the opportunity, and hopefully maybe we can do this soon, I would like to actually cut off the top branch that kind of pokes itself just directly out of the water line. I think that area right there is kind of a waste of space. I think if we hack that away, we would actually end up opening up that arm below and then some other space as well on the sand bed that we can maybe fill in some more corals. Speaking of corals, we've added in quite a few new specimens into the tank. After we did the butane torch burning, we ended up pulling a lot of the frags out, putting them into an invert wall over in the farm to allow them to get cleaned off and all of that. During that time period, we ended up putting a couple of new frags into the tank, and I think they're really starting to come to. To give you guys an update on all the corals, we'll just go ahead and start from the top and work our way down. Starting all the way at the top near the surface, we're gonna have a brand new frag of our TSA Laffy Taffy. This is an awesome Bernard Poro that I think anyone should have in a reef tank in their home. It's a totally beautiful coral. It's one that I mentioned in our Gani video video, and it's definitely one that I cannot wait to get a nice chunky and healthy frag in my reef tank at home. I always love seeing it when it stretches out its crazy long tentacles and they're that nice violet purple color. Transitioning over to the next of it, we have a small little frag of bird's nest. We talked a little bit about it in some of the problems we're having. We have some high alkalinity, so we wanted to add in some more SPS to try and drain away. And the best thing to do if you're trying to do that is also pick some corals that are really fast growing. So bird's nest was on the top of our list, and we ended up snagging a small little frag of this green bird's nest, got it into the tank. Below that is a nice small frag of a toadstool leather that we wanted to get into the tank as well. You guys know me, I love the motion of the ocean, all the moving corals, so directly next to one another we've got a beautiful gani, and then we also have a nice toadstool. So gonna be really cool when the toadstool grows out and we start to see more of the polyps doing a little swaying in the water flow. Just like I said, there's a nice beautiful red gani directly below that, and to the right of that is a small little frag of another green gani that we have in our farm that we're aquaculturing. The nuclear fusion, the double grafted green and red monicap is doing well. It's starting to encrust, starting to put out some new fresh growth, so exciting to see that as well. Another fast growing SPS coral, so we'll be utilizing that to help lower our alkalinity levels too. And we have a nice Florida Rickordia. Shout out to the Florida Rickordias. Really cool that we have a nice plethora of them in the farm that we're actively aquaculturing. This is a species that is slowly disappearing from the wild environment, so the fact that we're able to aquaculture them here in-house is really cool. And I have to say, the colors on most Rickordias are really out of this world. I love this one with the nice blues and the really vibrant gold colors. Below one of the arms, we have a couple frags of some chalices. We've got a nice Space Invader chalice, and we also have a TSA sugar cookie. So really cool to get some nice lower light corals underneath the overarching arms. And then below those two chalices, we have a nice little Euphilia garden working out. Got a nice little rainbow hammer. And then we also recently added in this green octospawn. I'm a fan of these corals because of how crazy and weird they look. Also, once again, they bring some awesome motion to a tank, but I'm really excited to see this nice little Euphilia garden here in the back of the 15-gallon continue to develop and grow out. Directly on the sand bed below, we're gonna have two separate little acan gardens going on. The acans did so well originally with the first round of them. We decided to keep them in and then add in a second group of them as well. So really excited to see more acans in the tank, nice and fluffy, and a lot of these acans that we're aquaculturing here at TSA have some really brilliant colors. So really nice to add some nice flair to your sand bed if you're looking for something that can enjoy a little lower flow, some lower light. A little nice acan garden would be awesome to see in anyone's tank at home. Something that I thought that was pretty cool when we were doing our crazy breakdown and maintenance when it came to the turf algae and we were doing all the torching of the rock work, we ended up breaking away a bunch of the corals that were originally glued onto the scape. If you guys remember, there was a couple acans that were directly on this front-facing arch arm down to the sand bed, and when we pulled it out, we ended up breaking away a lot of the corals. And I guess one of the acans had started to encrust and grow a small head on the Rockscape itself. We pulled the Rockscape out, we completely torched it. Thankfully, we missed this small little budding of a head, and now we actually have an acan that's growing directly onto the rock work. It's pretty cool to see how resilient and strong these aquacultured corals are after everything it's been through. For it to be able to survive and still have a head that's growing on the rockwork is pretty awesome. It's a testament to how strong these corals can be. Overall though, the corals are looking really nice in the tank, whether it be the TSA Laffy Taffy we've added in, the nice Florida Rickordia that we've got going, or both of our acan gardens. I'm really excited to see the development of this system. I know it's been a long time coming for an update on this tank, but there's been a lot going on here at Top Shelf. We have a lot of things happening day in and day out, but also there's been a lot going on with this tank and its development and how it's been able to finally get to this point here today. Earlier in the video, we talked about the cleanup crew that we have in the tank. We've talked about some of the new corals we've added in, but we haven't talked about the fish. I wanted to make mention about what's been happening with the fish situation here in the system. I'm gonna warn everyone, clownfish can be pretty brutal with their partners, and this clownfish ended up chasing the other clown out of the tank. and the clown ended up jumping. There was a couple situations where I found the one clown, the small male clown, on the backside of the all-in-one chamber. So I was noticing that they were chasing each other around and the clown was getting forced to basically make a jump for its life. And that clown ended up doing that. And with, once again, the scape situation that we have, we can't really put a lid on this tank. So it kind of limits the type of fish that we're adding in. Also, the assessors ended up not making it as well. I think those guys ended up just getting completely outcompeted for food. This one clown has kind of become a brute and she's become pretty difficult to deal with. I've been thinking lately, maybe I take her out, put her into my desk tank and allow her to maybe get a change of environment, and maybe that'll change the way her behavior is. Maybe I can get her to pair up with my current storm clown. I only have a single storm in my desk tank, so we'll maybe have to figure out a new situation for fish list that we want to add into the 15-gallon. I'm curious to hear down in the comments below if I'm going to be adding in any new fish into the Nuvo 15. I want to hear from you guys. What kind of fish do you think I should be adding into this Nano Reef tank? I know for me personally, I would love to get a basslet into this tank, maybe like a cave basslet, maybe something like a Swiss guard, something of that sort. I think it'd be really cool to have a basslet, a smaller basslet in this system, or maybe try and get a pair of Royal Grandmas, something like that. I'd love to see a little bit more color in this tank and maybe some fish that have a little bit more personality come out and enjoy me hanging out here in the studio. The one clown kind of just hangs out in the back corner. I think the back corner is what she considers to be her host, so I'm just kind of letting her do her thing, but she pretty much hangs out in the back of the tank for the majority of the day. When it comes to the maintenance on this tank, I'm very similar to what I'm doing over with the Reefer 250. I'm doing a water change a week. Every single Friday, I'm doing a water change, about 2.5 to 5 gallons, depending on the numbers. We've had some pretty high phosphates in this tank recently, so we've been running GFO. I've been doing some larger water changes of about 5 gallons a week, just trying to get this tank back and up and rolling. I will say though, for maintenance, it can be a little cumbersome to work around the Rockscape. I do utilize one of the tiny little mag floats to scrape around and do all the scraping that I need to do in the system. But when it comes to cleaning up the sand bed and things like that, I'll go in with some large tongs, pick out all the shells of any of the inverts that didn't make it, and then we'll try and clean up the sand. I'll do some siphoning of the sand bed as well every 2 or 3 weeks or so, trying to make sure I'm getting that sand turned over. We do have a bit of Nacerius snails in the tank. I think those guys have been helping quite a bit, helping keep the nitrates down lower, especially with all the nutrients that's bound up in the sand bed. They're helping turn that over and getting that nice and cleaned up. The air plants have also been interesting to deal with this tank. Obviously, they're a plant, so they're gonna want some more wider spectrum. So for 2 hours of the lighting schedule, I have more of a peak of white light. I think that kind of attributed to the growing of nuisance algae too. So that's been interesting, kind of playing back and forth between the plant health and then also the reef's health. We're constantly watering them with some fresh water coming out of a freshwater system from Kevin's house. I try to constantly kind of miss them, but it is seen that, you know, whenever I'm doing my maintenance or anything like that, I can sometimes see myself splashing a little bit of water around. So trying to do my best here to keep these plants nice and safe and away from the salt water. I can tell right away if they get anywhere near any salt wicking that they don't like that in the slightest. When it comes to the equipment on this tank, we ended up adding in a Nero 3. We were kind of hurting on flow, in my opinion, and so what we ended up doing was putting a Nero 3 on the back wall of the 15-gallon. We took the drop down and the random flow generator off the tank, and we're allowing just the direct flow from the open end nozzle to just push into the system. I think that's actually helped a ton. I think with where the rock kind of is situated and how it works in the scape, it kind of impedes a lot of the water flow in the tank, so any way we can get extra water flow going has been really helpful. So pulling that off, the little step down and the random flow generator, I think has been really helpful for the tank, and then obviously the addition of the Nero 3 has been really beneficial too as well. As for the light on the tank, we're utilizing the A500X from Kessel. Big shout out to Kessel for hooking us up with this light. I'm gonna say this right from the start though, I think I'm making this a bit more difficult on the tank with where I have the placement of the light. With where we're in the studio, a lot of the shots that you guys see of me in studio, I try to make sure that that light is actually out of shot. So we ended up having to put it up pretty high in relation to the reef tank. And we've also added in one of the lens kits to try and get some more narrow lighting down towards the tank itself. It's been kind of a playing it around, trying to par read it and figure out exactly what's going to be best for this light, but I have enjoyed utilizing the A500X. I love the shimmer that it brings into the tank. I think all Kessels have an amazing way of bringing shimmer into a tank. I loved running the AP9X on one of my old 25 Lagoons back in the day, so definitely a light that I enjoy. If you guys want to snag one of these lights, be sure to head over to topshelfaquatics.com and you can grab your own today as well. I also want to give a big shout out to Evan, who's been working hand in hand with me on both these tanks in the studio, and also the entire farm staff for helping out with testing, helping out when I'm not here on the weekends with these tanks. They don't run without you guys, so big shout out to the entire farm team, but especially to Evan with all of the collaboration I do with him on a day-to-day basis with both these tanks. Whenever I get in the studio and I start talking about any of the tanks in here, I like giving you guys raw, uncut, and transparent updates of what's going on in these systems. I think giving you guys false hopes or just selling fake ideas is the wrong way to go about reef keeping. Reefing can be difficult at times, it can be easy at times, and there's many different ways that people reef keep. I also want to let you know every single system is going to be different. Yes, we mirror some very similar issues that we've had here in the 250 and in the 15 gallon that we've kind of been able to play off of each other, but not all of the issues are exactly the same. This has been a lot of fun giving you guys an update on the 15 gallon. I love nano tanks, so to be able to share this one here on the channel is a lot of fun, and I think a ton of people get into the hobby because of nano tanks, and it's usually one of the first things they try out. So if you guys are looking for a nano tank, I think the Innovative Marine 15 gallon is a perfect size. If you guys are looking to do, your maintenance once a week, a 5 gallon water change is perfect for this tank. It's about a 30% water change. And if you guys are trying to keep it nice and simple when it comes to reefing, this nano tank might just be the option for you guys. If you guys have any questions regarding the 15 gallon, if you guys have any suggestions or things we should do with this tank, be sure to drop them down in the comments below. If you guys have hung out all the way till the end, I want to say thank you so much. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any future uploads.